Welcome to the Stone Table. This isn't a stage, it's a gathering place. Here, lifters of all kinds bring their stories. The heavy, the honest, and the hard-earned. Real voices, real weight. Shared like a good pour among friends. Recorded in Ontario, Canada, and open to lifters everywhere. Sláinte.
Welcome back to the Stone Table podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Innes. There are places in the world where strength is not a sport. It's not competition. It's not a physique. It's not a personal brand. It's part of the ritual. It's part of the history. In Iceland, strength and stones were never just tools. They were thresholds. And if you could lift these stones or demonstrate your strength, you earned your place, your work, your belonging, your identity. And today's guest really stands directly inside that lineage. And I am super happy that he agreed to chat with us today. And I'm going to pronounce this wrong, although I did practice it before we went on, but it's Jòn Valgeir Williams.
Yes.
He is a two-time,
Well done.
thank you. He is a two-time World's Strongest Man competitor. He's trained at the legendary Jakobel Gym alongside Magnus for Magnusson. But more than that, I truly see him as a guardian of Icelandic stone culture and a founder of Valgeirs Strengthtrips, which brings people from around the world to lift history with their own hands in very special places.
Yeah.
So this conversation is about strength, yes, but it's about ritual, identity, and what happens when human hands meet historic stone and what it feels like to be a steward and fostering a community in this area. So Jòn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as I start off with every guest, what are you drinking today?
Well, it's like you say, much like yourself, I'm going training later and I will be bringing my son and we're going to be doing some Olympic lifting, which is going to be fun. So only coffee for me today and some water. So just keep myself prepared. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I tried to find an Icelandic drink and this is the closest I got. So I do have my coffee, but a bit through the episode, as I said, we're both training. So I've got blue raspberry, kind of symbolic of the Blue Lagoon that I'm sure you'll talk to us about later.
Yeah, you don't want to drink the Blue Lagoon though.
So
that will leave a mark.
For sure. All right. So I gave that long introduction. I mean, but you have just such an immense strength history as well as stone. So for those that are meeting you for the first time, who are you beyond, the strongman world?
Well, I'm a family man, first and foremost, trainer of my son, husband of my wife, which is a big part of why I do strength tips today. And it's, well, my friend Logic is a very good friend of mine. So that's basically me in a nutshell. Yeah, probably like most men. I like my gaming from every now and then.
Yeah.
And I was born and raised with computers along my side. When I was younger, my stepfather, he actually had, he worked at Apple when Apple was just, the main thing was the colored Apple. It was really, really interesting. So we had computers on the home to the Apple IIe and all those old school computers. So yeah, basically a little bit of computer nerd / strength nerd. And I loved my basketball. Basketball, I still like to play every now and then. So I enjoy that very, very much so.
Thank you for that. And I think that that's what is the commonality amongst all our guests, whether they're world's strongest men or just the regular lifter. It's that commonality to that shared experience of we're just regular people. We're regular people who like strength, who likes to lift stones, and who come together as a community.
Absolutely.
But I've had a lot of folks on here from the Scottish community, from Ohio, but I haven't yet had anyone on from Iceland. And I think, yes, and I think this episode is going to be a great experience for folks to kind of learn, if they haven't already understood, the historic stones that are in Iceland, but also the strong strength community and the history in that and how your business fits into that. So let's talk about that a little bit. You grew up in Iceland, which
Yes.
obviously has a unique relationship with hardship and land and resilience. How did that shape your relationship with discipline and with strength sport?
Well, it was, I mean, first of all, when I was younger and how I got into strength sport was just because I was in the gym and I was focusing on, looking good for the ladies back in the day. And then I just sort of got into strength training when I saw this guy deadlifting 200 kilos for repetitions. And I thought to myself, I want my bar to look like that. And that's basically how it began. And of course, always ringing in the background every single time was Magnus Magnuson, John Paul Sigmason. And that's what I grew up with, World's Strongest Man on TV. And it was sort of, how do you say it? You always knew about it. And I never sort of got into that per se until I saw that guy. I mean, he wasn't anybody famous, but he was a strong guy at my gym.
Mhm.
And I asked him if he would teach me how to deadlift properly. And he got me up to 200 kilos for 3 repetitions before my ventures into strongman, because I decided to switch on to the gyms, into the legendary Gym 80. And that's where Hjalti Arnason walked in and said, "You should do strongman." And I was like, "Yeah, okay. It's tomorrow. Yeah, okay." So I rocked up to my first strongman competition completely. Novice wasn't even, it didn't, well, complete beginner anyway. But I didn't finish last. So I thought to myself, that was one hell of a day out. And I was really happy that I did it. And I performed all right for a, complete beginner. And yeah, so it was such an interesting experience. And that's how I got basically into strength and lifted my first Atlas stone there, which was a 100-kilo Atlas stone. And that was, yeah, it was pretty interesting. Most people wouldn't like the old school competitions. You never knew the events before you arrived. That was Icelandic.
And would you say that was it that strongman event that you walked away and said, "Hey, this is kind of who I am," or did it happen before that, do you think?
I would say it was probably then when I realized that strength sport was for me,
Yeah.
because it just felt right. And I really wanted to pursue this. And I was always happy working out. I was always happy. I mean, Magnus, when I met Magnus after the competition, he heard that, a newbie came in and didn't finish last. So he sort of, you know, we had a chat, and then I asked him if I wanted to, if I could train with him. Yeah, that was the beginning. So what a training partner to have, just off the bat almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, he taught me basically everything I knew, and but he didn't teach me everything. He kept some parts for himself because he was still competing himself. So yeah, it was interesting.
So I want to give people a window into Yakabol, because when you go on your strength trips, you do visit various strength locations and gyms, but you train there, and basically it was a sacred ground for the strongman world, not only in Iceland, I would say, but writ large worldwide. And you
Yes.
train closely with Magnus. Like, can you
Mhm.
explain what that environment was like?
Here's the thing: if you want to succeed at any sport, anything, you've got to seek out people who are better than you. There's no other explanation. There's no other calculations. Like my first session with Magnus, I've told this story quite a few times, but my deadlift was, like I told you, 200 kilos for 3 repetitions. And Magnus asked me if I deadlifted 200. And I said, yes. And he said, 5 times. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I already started telling myself I could do more than I've already had done, just by his questioning me. And then at the end of the session, my record became 8 repetitions. That was one session.
Oh my goodness.
So I improved 5 repetitions in one session with Magnus, and I probably would have done, I don't know for how long, if I would have continued on my own. But this is the inspiration. This is, I could have walked out and given up, but no, I was like, I want to push. I need to prove myself. And because Magnus was deadlifting 260 for 5 easily. And I thought to myself, that's when I'm going to have to ramp up my game here. And it wasn't giving up. It was just like continued. And Magnuson will tell you this. I was his only training partner who lasted for that long when he was still competing. But I never had any issues training hard, ever. So it was just like, I rocked up, didn't matter what was on the menu. I just got it done. And that's the mentality that you have to have if you're going to improve and be strong.
And what would you say, like, that was a huge mental gain for you? What would you say that are some of the kind of practical lifting principles or training principles that you walked away from Jackable with?
It's about support. It's about the spirit, as we call it in Iceland, anti. And that's one of my T-shirts, actually, with If Strongwear. It says, Djöfis is anti. And that's when you're basically, it's a saying in Icelandic that somebody is gifted the spirit of, pushing hard. And also, it also means like somebody does something incredibly strange or stupid or whatever, and then everybody's laughing and go, Djöfis is anti. And that's, another factor of it. But if you show incredible feats of strength or just domination in the gym, that's Djöfis anti. And that's one of those things. It's just like, it's camaraderie, it's therapy, it's, it's just so much more than just going to the gym. And that's why I enjoy taking my son to the gym, because he recognizes that. And we train here at Genesis Gym in the UK. Sort of one of the last hardcore privately owned gyms here in the UK. And it's amazing, proper for gym. And everybody there is on a mission to get stronger or more shredded, or, everybody's there with a purpose. So that's what that's the community that you want to be in. And I recognize it's quite hard to be in that state, like in America, or, getting around strongman is hard. You have to travel a long distance. I mean, the guys who trained at Westside Barbell, for example, they had to travel, I don't know how long, and just basically move and live in their cars or whatever, just to get to train there. That's how important this is. But in Iceland, it's a very close community, and you can actually rock up to the Thorsborg gym or Jakobol, and there's going to be some strong dudes there, and you can train with them if you're willing to put in the work. And people who are strong and they do the work, they recognize people who want to do the same.
Yeah, I feel this. And even though my coach is over in Scotland, I feel very much what you're saying here. And I'm trying to do that through also a virtual community as well, for those stone lifters who, do not have access to just, go over to Scotland or go over to Iceland, and try
Yeah.
to create that community of support where, you know, it is great to lift the historics, but if you can just go in your backyard, you can also achieve amazing things there too.
Hmm.
And I feel like that might have been what it was like for you when you stepped on that World's Strongest Man stage for the first time. That community, that camaraderie, but also wanting to do tremendous things. What was that like?
Well, I mean, first, there was a qualifier, and I was competing with Magnus there. And Magnus didn't want to go to World Strongest Man after a certain, he's just he was like, I've had enough. And so we were sort of competing after him, and if we beat him in any events, that was a plus. But normally he would be the number one, because he was so technical and such a good athlete, and just incredibly strong, as 4 times world strongest man you would think he would be. And always mentally. Then I finished second place after Magnus, and 2 times, and that got me to world strongest man. And that was the Westfjord Viking. was very renowned. And there we had the Lautra stones, for example, on the loading event. They had brought out the stones to, then I didn't, that was the first time, and I didn't even know how historic they were back then. I just heard about they were used for some fishermen back in the day, but that's all I heard, right? And so Alstekkur was the final stone, and it was, yeah, it was an interesting experience lifting those stones, and because they were so different. And now I'm going there to the actual place where these amazing stones are, and that sort of puts everything in a different perspective when you're there with the elements. And oh man, me and Steven will tell you when he lifted the full strong at Lautra the first time, the weather, there was more wind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. But I've never seen a man so happy ever like Steven when he got that full strong. And he did, that was probably 1.5 minute fight with that damn stone. So yeah, sorry, stone gods, but that was a fight.
Okay, I love that you brought this up because I've been doing some research on trying to pinpoint the resurgence of stone lifting. And in Iceland, it really never died per se. But what year was that you lifted those stones in World's Strongest Man? Do you recall?
No, that wasn't World Strongest Man. That wasn't. That was the Westford Viking. Sorry.
Oh, the Westford Viking. Okay.
Yes. So that will be 2000, 2002, 2003-ish. It could have been the competition before that. So it was one of my first competitions, sort of as a competitor in the Westford Viking. So it was sort of the main competition in Iceland, and was the qualifier.
Because like what I've been looking at is trying to see when the resurgence of the stone lifting happened. And I really feel that it does kind of relate to the World's Strongest Man when they were lifting the Icelandic, like the Husafell stone.
Yes.
And then we went into there was like the Sear stone lifted by Derek Poundstone in the 2000s.
Phenomenal lift.
Yeah, phenomenal lift. And then we went into the kind of the documentaries and things on that. And I really do think that the World's Strongest Man, and again, I'm not bound to this thesis, but I do think Iceland and its long-standing continuation of not letting that history go and its resurgence back into the World's Strongest Man realm is kind of partly what's pushed, what kind of initiated stones back onto the map.
Yes.
What do you think about that? And like tell us about why Iceland never really let go of that culture.
If I could pinpoint one thing out, I would probably would. But it is the love of the strength part of Iceland. And I think, if I tell you the God's honest truth, I think it also exploded when Jón Páll Sigmarsson became so successful. And Jón Páll Sigmarsson went around and lifted these historic stones. I know Magnus did, and many of the old school strongmen had gone there, and I hadn't, if I tell you the God's honest truth. And so when I was doing these trips, I had just heard about these stones. So I went there, a complete novice. And when you arrive at the Trittvik stones and you think that's only 154 kilo stone, but that pebble is tough. That is one of the hardest stones in Iceland, without a doubt. And you can see that somebody who owned the boats at Trittvik thought to himself, let's put them to a proper test. And let's use that stone. It's like, what? That's immensely hard, just like, wow. Yeah, it's a giant pebble and it's slippery. And yeah, it's for anyone who has lifted that stone, it's an immense feat of strength.
Okay, so for those that do not know Icelandic stone history, can we just pause here for a moment and let's talk about the Ditravik stones and kind of the history behind it and the various stones that are there? Because my goal of this podcast and this table is to get people out exploring, and part of that is obviously going to Iceland.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's they're in a very touristy position, and like the thing is, when you come to Dritvik and you see the waves, the beach, and you can see, how tough it must have been to be there, right?
Mhm.
You have to be an immensely strong-willed person to be able to go out to that sea where the waves are going, come on, I dare you to come in. It's literally that. You see, it's just the sea is brutal there. And there's a ship that sort of became a shipwreck on that beach, and it's distributed all across that beach because it's been shredded by the waves.
Waves.
And yeah, waves, and of course, stones in the shore, but that kind of stuff. But it's astounding. That place, you would have to be strong to have gone out in any kind of weather. And fair play to these sailors that were there back in the day, man. It's absolutely incredible. They had to be strong, and that's why they had, the AMLO, the halfdrættingur, half strong, and then full strong. And if you only lifted the first one, you were considered just a weakling, and you would sent on your way. If you didn't get the second one, if you got the second one, you could, be of some use on the boat. And the third one, which is of course half strong, you get half a share, and then full strong, full share. But like I say, I would have liked to see the guys, coming there completely, natural and just there, and they just had to deliver to be able to supply for their families. And you know, wow, immense. Like, Icelanders were strong back in the day if you had many with full share on the boat. But like I say, yeah, we'll see.
So what do you think then? I mean, the stone culture remained in Iceland, but then there was this move to kind of standardized equipment. Was there something lost in that transition to the standardized equipment, or is the Iceland strength culture, does the stones also is it also part of that?
I mean, I think for as long as we have been around, stones have been around. And if you wanted to increase your strength, go lift a rock. I think that was the basic. There were no implements.
Yeah.
No, you just had to. If you wanted to get stronger, like in Sweden, for example, the reason why there are so many lifting stones in Sweden is because of all the fields would freeze, and then they would thaw, and all these stones came out of the field and would wreck the equipment, right? And that's why there was big stones that had to be removed. So you had to prove yourself to lift the stone that you could work on the farm to be able to lift those stones and move them around. And that's incredible, right?
It is
And
absolutely incredible.
yes, and it's fantastic to think about, especially the Icelandic strength culture. And there are more like stones and stones, which are sort of the footsterkur quadruple or trios or whatever they are. They are, I mean, there's 5 stones at Lautrad, of course, even 6 if you count the Klovi that's buried underground. So yeah, it's quite interesting to think about that. This was really a thing, and people would come and test their strength to be able to go out to sea and get the proper pay. And then you have, like, the weakling, for example. There's only halvtrættingur, and there's half strong, and there's full strong, and there's allsterkur at Lautrar. Was there Amladi? Sorry, I think there was, but I can't remember it exactly now. But anyway, here's the thing. It was a proof of that you could work on the boat, and you had to be able to pull your weight.
Well, I hope one day I might be considered a weakling if I ever venture over to, to Iceland to lift stones. But let's
Well,
talk.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
50, I mean, the second stone is very, very, very much manageable. And there was a girl who came with me in 2020, 21. Yeah, 2021, I think it was. And she lifted halvdrættingur, so she could get on the boat. And she actually, she got half strong off the floor, which is damn
Wow.
good because 100 kilo stone. it's pretty damn impressive. So
And
yeah,
it's smooth too. It's not, there's no real good handles on that one.
no.
Okay, well, I never thought at the age of 50 that I would be making my dreams and ambitions to be able to get on a fishing boat, but here we are. Uh, it'll be
There might
maybe
be something fishy about that.
2027 or 2028. Maybe this will be the goal. But let's talk about your stone journey. What have you've traveled all over. You've been to, you take trips to Scotland. It sounds like you've also taken trips to Sweden as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a brief kind of history of all of the stones that you've touched, and then we'll kind of go into the ones that maybe have humbled you the most.
Now, here's the thing. I mean, the Husafell stone, lifting the Husafell stone was a great thing because it has the most prestige. It's in strongman competition. The Husafell stone is based on, so many events or for the carry event, basically. And I think, in history, that's probably one of the most amazing stones to lift off the floor. And even though if you don't carry it around the sheep pen, just lifting it and in an upright position it's quite a feat of strength. I also said, though, one of my most sort of, how do you say it, emotional stone lift was half strong, and that was 3 months after I had my hip surgery.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had my hip resurfaced, and then I went out there, and let's just say I wasn't really feeling, how do you say it, strong at that moment because I hadn't been training at all, really. So getting half strong off the floor, at least after 3 months of before I had the full blown hip surgery, I was that was a very, very, very good feeling.
Yeah. So we'll sit on the Husafell for a minute because I've done a bit of research. I saw Steven's lift of that. I love his energy and his emotion
Yes.
doing that. And I think he's going back again, traveling with you not too
To
long.
Scotland. Yeah.
He's going to Scotland. Okay. Uh, but there's been 12 women that have lifted the Husafell in some type of fashion, whether it just be
Yes.
off the ground, getting some wind underneath. And what are your thoughts on the pendulum lift?
I mean, hey, I think everything is fair game.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't mind because, like you say, the pendulum lift is, how do you say it? It's a way that you can get that thing into your lap. But here's the thing: when you do a pendulum lift of it, getting a grip of it afterwards is very, very hard. So
Yes.
it only takes the hard part of getting it off the floor away. But when you get it into your lap and when you get it into your arms, you have less to hold, the less thing to hold on. So fair play to anybody who stands up with it after pendulum lift, right? You also see guys doing it, the pendulum lift, and then they rotate that thing around. So 186 kilo that you're rotating in your lap. That's no joke.
I think Liam did that. Liam Brown
Yes.
did that. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he rotated it. And I'm actually, my seats right now are all Husafell sandbags that I'm sitting on, up to 200 pounds, which is like just
Very
shy of
good.
100 kilos. So have you witnessed any women that have done the Husafell?
No, I
No.
have not. But the story is, of course, that the farmer's daughter, the priest's daughter, lifted it and walked two circles around the pen, and which is, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
it's incredible, And she just wanted to show up the farmhands. Cheers to you.
Yes. Cheers. Slancha. Okay. So that kind of touches on something that has been part of my journey with stones is kind of that emotional, kind of spiritual aspect. And you've got to witness so many people
Yes.
lifting stones, not even in Iceland, but all over. And
Yeah.
can you explain? And this is very important to me and my journey is that witnessing of other people's journey through strength and through achieving things that are basically impossible. What happens when someone touches, let's say, an Icelandic stone for the first time and you get to witness that?
I mean, it's always so fascinating. People are still sort of most of the time in disbelief that they can't do it, right? And they're there, and some people are really hyped, really focused. They know exactly what to do. They've studied it hard, and and it's my job as a coach, and sort of, the guy who pushes people to get the right grips or something like that, and then just give them the cheer and spur them on. It just like any gym session. If you're gonna do a personal best, I'm there to support you, and it's just so fascinating to see that when people realize that they've lifted any stone, you know, because it becomes more when it's a stone. It's further away from you. It's a harder thing to grip. You have to grip it correctly. You have to find the position that you are comfortable with. It doesn't necessarily have to be my position. And then they rotate it around and they find a better position. So it's so much fun, and it's a great experience to see, people who come in with zero expectation but go away 100% satisfied and happy. It's such an amazing thing. And that makes my trips. It just makes me happy. And that's why I enjoy doing these trips.
So when did the idea for Valgeirs Strengthtrips first start? When did
So
the spark for that happen?
so it's 10 years ago now.
Okay.
So basically, like I told you, I think I mentioned, but anyway, I was talking to my clients at the gym, and they were asking me, how did you train for World's Strongest Man? And I was discussing this with my wife, and my wife was going, why don't we just show them? And that's when I started, you know, doing everything about trying to make something around the trips. And I got my clients to come with me. In the beginning, we went around. We went to Jakobol. We went to Thorsbar Gym. We went to Dritvik or Husefell, and yeah, it was amazing, absolutely fantastic. And it worked out so well. But Iceland is so easy to fall in love with, right? When you're there, the surroundings, and just the views and the experience of being in Iceland. It doesn't matter what the weather is. You're in Iceland and the nature is amazing, and it just becomes something incredible. Even though you don't lift a single rock, people still love it because the surroundings.
And I think when I first saw your Instagram page, I thought, okay, tourism. But no, that's not, I don't and after speaking to some of the guests and friends that have went on your trip, because I think there was a Brian from New England.
Brian, yes.
Yeah, I think he went with you last year.
Yes.
It's a pilgrimage. It's really about yes, you get to lift stones and you get to see the strength culture, but it is a pilgrimage similar like to walking the El Camino or any other kind of stone tours. Was that intentional? Because it doesn't feel like tourism to me.
No, I just wanted people to experience strength culture like I did.
Yeah.
And basically, I didn't lift many stones back in the day, except in competition stones. So I would say the only historic stones I had lifted before starting this was the Lautra stones because of the Westford Viking. And yeah, that was incredible. What a feeling. And I would say, how do you say it? No, it was about the culture. It's a feeling. People come to Iceland. They came with me and my clients who had been nowhere near. We went to Jakobol, for example. They were nowhere near a 100-kilo bench press. Both of them had hit a 100-kilo bench press in Iceland, which was quite phenomenal. You know,
Wow.
they were way off when I was training them and concentrating. However, I did taper them down, so they would be fresh for the trip. But yeah, I didn't expect 100 kilos, but they did it, and both of them lifted half strong off the floor, so that was incredible. And I mean, that's what I live for, to see these people succeed and have fun with it and as well. And I mean, in the beginning, there was definitely one of those things that, I could have done better, but we learn from our mistakes. And it's such an interesting now, like with Jim Compton, for example, there's no tacky, no, of course, no tacky, but no chalk, just his raw belief in, Jesus, and, lifts his rocks, and just, it's amazing. And that taught me a lot. And it becomes a totally different aspect.
He is like a phenomenal lifter, and he's not on social media, but
No.
he, I believe, lifted the invert overhead,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. And I believe I have footage of that for another kind of episode that I'm doing on the stone. But he is just a phenomenal lifter. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, on your trips, you get access to, oh, it's this one stone on a farmer's land.
That is Lauter stones.
Yes. And I think he was there when you were lifting those, correct?
Yes. But
Yeah.
he came with us with me, Mikey, and Steven.
Yes.
And there was the three of them and me. And that was incredible. That was I think it was a little bit rainy then, but it wasn't as horrendous weather as when we went with Steven and his son and Mikey. The weather then, the rain was going sideways.
Sideways.
There was so much wind there. It was absolutely horrendous. But then again, we are, I would consider myself fairly lucky with weather. Steven found his name for me. He calls me Mr. Sunshine. And it's because normally, even Brian will tell you, the weather wasn't good when we were driving to the stones, and the forecast was bad. But when we arrived at the stone, especially Drittvik, everything calmed down. We had fantastic weather. The stones were dry. It was amazing. And it's fun story. When we were driving to Lekstein, which is just 220 kilo stone in the Westfjords, we're driving there, and this cloudy, this dark everywhere. I looked down the fjord, and we're driving down the fjord, and ahead, there's sun in the sky on one spot.
Oh my
I
God.
kid you not. And we drove into that spot, and that's where the Lekstein was. It was like I just chuckled, because
Yeah.
I was like thinking to myself, "This is crazy." But yeah, but my family is from the Westfjords, so might be something in
It
that
might be.
perspective, but you know,
Or just something around the stones, and it was meant to be.
yes,
So as I said, have been researching. You run a number of tours a year, not only in Iceland, but let's talk about Iceland. I think I purchased the flight over and fly into, where would you fly into?
Keflavik.
Okay.
There is a flight to Akureyri, but that's way too far from the stones. It's even further. I mean, one would have thought Akureyri would be an easier place to go to the westward, but it isn't. It's actually quite further away, which surprised me a little bit. I thought it was shorter in my head, but I was wrong. Uh, but the horse stone, and so I've been to Akureyri with my clients, and we went for the horse stone, and we went to Torvi Olafsson's garden where the Iceland's first atlas stones are.
Wow.
That is very cool. That's one of my trips is to Akureyri, and there we meet Sigfús Fossdal, my friend, and we meet Torvi Olafsson. He's 2 or 3 times world strongest man competitor, and he got to the finals and everything. Very, very impressive. I think he like squatted 380 kilos when he was 16, and just something like crazy. But he was immensely strong, and he's a good friend of mine. So he allows me to go to the garden, and we challenge those stones. And the horse stone is always very interesting because that story behind that stone, I'll believe it when I see someone do it. But it's got a handle on it. The story is that the farmer, you tie your horse to the stone, but the farmer used to pick it up and swing it around him. So 250 kilo stone. I've lifted that thing off the floor quite a few times now, and I won't be swinging it anytime soon.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know about that stone. And I
Oh,
did, as you know, I did this research for this conversation, and that is definitely one to see. And those Atlas stones, I'm very, very keen on seeing.
yeah.
So to walk us through a tour then, I land, do you meet us at the airport? And like, what is the itinerary for?
No, normally I mean, if you're traveling from the States, for example, some people like to come in day early or even 2 days early just to recover. So they would either take the fly bus to the Viking Hotel, where normally my clients stay. And the Viking Hotel is always an amazing destination to go because it's fantastically well done. And there's so many memorabilia from the Viking era. It's absolutely incredible. So we would be meeting there or even at the airport, depend on when you're coming in. And on a typical trip, we would go to Thor's Power Gym first. And we've been very lucky. Hafthor was training quite a few times when we've been there. And he's always very chatty with us. And, I know him fairly well. And his dad is always a immensely inspirational creature as well, with his massive hands. He's tall and thin, but he's got grip strength that's really impressive. And we either meet with them. There's the Thor's Power shop, of course, and we go there into the gym and we train hard. And then we not too hard because we got the stones day after.
Yeah.
So usually just try to pride myself on teaching people how to deadlift correctly, and find that the deadlift was always my lift back in the day, even though I only have a 350 kilo deadlift to my name. But it's doesn't seem much these days, but there was fair amount back in the day. And anyway, so it was just to sort of introduce people how to. And then then the day after we go out for in the evening we go out for dinner. And then in the morning we go out. Well, try to head out fairly early and drive to Drittvik first or Husafell. It depends on what stone you're focused on. So people who really want to live full strong, makes no sense to start with the Husafell stone and then go there. But may people be aware, the Drittvik stone is lighter, but my God, it's harder to get a grip on. We go for either Husafell or Drittvik, but it does depend on, the weather can be different, but there we go. Most of the time, I'm very lucky with weather. And then the day after, we wake up early, we go to Jacopo, and if Magnus is in town, I'll normally give him a call and get him to come around and sell us some merchandise, and just say hi. And like one of my clients was 14, 50, and he was doing a PP on his squat, and Magnus spotted him,
Oh,
for
my
the
goodness.
PP. It was very cool. And yeah, that was very memorable. He was very, very, very happy with that. And then we go to the Blue Lagoon for some recovery. And sometimes we go to the Sky Lagoon, and that's sort of my regular trip. And then there's a trip that I do, and then I add the quad bikes on top.
Right.
So we go on the highlands. And actually, the guy who owns the quad bike company, he was a fellow competitor back in the day, and we used to compete together. And he's a very, very funny and interesting guy to travel with, and he owns that company. So we go to the highlights called Óbyggðaferðir. I think it's atvtravel.is. And
Okay.
yeah. So that's the thing. And then, of course, my full strong trip is when we go to the west, to Drittvik, Husfell, and then we travel westfjords and we go to Lautrar. There's of course, the full strong series stones, the Lautrar stones, and then there's the stolen from me, the Brynjólfstak and Judas, all very close together. And but it is enough for a day. Then we have a evening, and we sort of go for a bite to eat. And then we go to Peterstein, and it's named after Peter. He's a good he was he was actually one of my coaches back in the day for shot put, and Peterstone was named after him because he wanted a spectacular place for a stone lift, and it doesn't get any more spectacular than the Peterstone. It's just on top of a mountain in front of one of the most beautiful waterfalls in the world, I would say. It's absolutely spectacular, and to lift a stone there's no comparison. And then we go to Ísafjörður, where we rest a little bit, have some bite to eat, and then we move on to Legsteinn. And Legsteinn is 220 kilos of awkwardness. And I saw Jimmy, when Jimmy lifted that thing, he got it like that first, and then he did the seesaw. Like he got,
Yes.
and he held it flat. I've never seen that in my life. So he held it like long ways in his arms and walked a few steps with it that way. 220 kilos of holding like that. It's just, it's immense.
It
And
is.
yeah, that was quite an interesting thing to see. And that's also been quite frequently used as a competition event in the Western Viking.
Hmm.
And of course, the most phenomenal history behind the stone is the leg stain. And that's when a farmer got screwed over by the devil, and he wanted his soul back. And the devil said to him, "Okay, but you have to lift the stone." So when he started trying the stone himself, he disappeared. But a sorcerer nearby saw that the devil was in the shadows with his hoof on the stone, so it wouldn't move. So the sorcerer caught him out and said, "You can't do that to the man." And the devil goes like, "Hey, he never said I couldn't." So, but he agreed that the sorcerer, and so that's why it became a thing that 100 circles by 100 different men, if I got it 100% right, if 100 circles go around the stone, his soul is free. So hence why that's the story behind the stone. But that stone is no joke. They,
No.
the hoof might be still there, I think.
Like you probably have never seen anybody like even get a smidge of any air under that, have you?
Well, I've seen Mikey,
Yeah.
Mike Christensen. He lifted the damn thing up and he walked around the whole circle. And he's an amazing carry. Now, Austin, uh, Austin, he got it. He got it off the floor into a rising position. Steven Wiener got it out of. They didn't walk with it per se, but they both got him. I think Steven took 1 or 2 steps, which is a feat of strength in its own. I tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
Steven is immense, just like,
Oh, he is. The conversation I had with him was amazing, and it'll be coming out in a couple weeks, but just a phenomenal guy. And if you're talking old school strength, that is a guy that
yes,
is old school strength.
yes.
It's
And he's still strong. He's still, still immensely strong. It's so commendable, right?
yeah,
And it just goes to show that you can proceed at any point in your life strength, right?
yeah,
And this is what I try to promote with all my clients. I'm a personal trainer here in the UK, and it's so much fun to see older women improving their strength and they're realizing how important it is. And one of these women came to me and said, "John, I tripped on a slab of rock. Instead of falling flat on my face, I caught myself, you know,
hmm
I just had to put my one leg forward. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if you hadn't taught me, strength basically." And that's immensely sort of encouraging. And I'm talking about, people over 70. And
yeah. And that's one of the most amazing things like that you do get to witness. Is there any other experiences that you've witnessed on these tours that were just incredibly humbling, incredibly just like moved you beyond the fact that you even yourself didn't even think it was possible?
well, here's the thing. I mean, I went with Jimmy to Korea and immense, like
Yeah.
stones there were many of them were very difficult, and one of them sort of sits in my memory because Jimmy didn't quite get it the first time, so we had to go back. So he wasn't satisfied. He only got it to his waist, and so he wanted sort of to stand up with it properly.
hmm
And uh and then he got it, and when we went there for the second time, and that was fabulous. It's just like to see the determination, the empowerment that he has. And like I say, no chalk ever, just natural, as natural as you be. That squeezing power that he has is just absolutely phenomenal, right? It's so much, like I say, so much power there. It's absolutely unbelievable. And he doesn't give himself 1 inch of credit. It's all God's work. So
Yes.
yeah, but that's him.
Yeah,
That's
he's
That's incredible.
phenomenal. Like no belts, no like there's absolutely nothing. It's just him. Usually he's shirtless in the pictures I've seen.
Doesn't matter the weather.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
Yeah.
with the weather. I mean, any weather, he's shirtless, and I'm
Yeah.
like, damn,
So
yeah.
So it's a chalk block tour. Like it's full. So when like you do the driving and you organize the like lodging.
Hotels, yeah.
Yeah. And so the only thing that, you pay that for that in the trip. So the only thing that you're having to pay outside of that would be for the food and things like that. Is correct?
Flights and food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for those that are interested in doing this trip, I will talk. We'll mention this again at the end of the episode. But what's the best way to get in touch with you to start planning your Icelandic trip?
Well, we do private trips as well. So
Okay.
if people are interested, like Jimmy going to Korea, for example,
Hmm.
and didn't even imagine I would ever go to Jeju Island in Korea. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
But yeah, there we were. And so Sweden, Scotland, I mean, these places are phenomenal. Southern part of Sweden, I would move there in a heartbeat. It's so beautiful. The architecture, the stones are amazing as well. But it's such a phenomenal place. And we stayed at this hotel, and there was a sauna by the lake. Like it was a giant window on the sauna, and you just sat, looked at the lake, and then you jumped into the lake in between sauna sessions. It was absolutely
Oh,
phenomenal.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, whatever people fancy, then I organize, how long it's between the stones and how long it takes to get this thing over with. Does depend on how many stones. Like me and Steven, we did a 1 day trip to Scotland. It was just 1 day, and but we went 11, 12 stones in one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Amazing.
We had to crack on quite a lot. Let's put it that way. We finished on the inward stone.
And I did see that him lift that one. That was also incredible. And I think for those who haven't done a trip over, having not to do the driving is a huge benefit. And I sincerely enjoy that part. I drove myself around my Scotland when Jamie wasn't taking me around, and it is somewhat stressful to do that. Plus, then go and lift. And I think that that's a huge benefit to traveling through you. So they can reach you through your Instagram. Is that or
Yes.
through a website? Okay.
Yeah. Or my website.
Okay. All right. So we've covered a lot. You've done, as you said, you've done trips to Sweden, Scotland. What are the trips?
Korea.
Korea, the trips that you have, the public ones coming out in 2026 that might be open for folks?
I mean, we got the spots left for Footstekker, at least two spots there. I got, yeah, that's the end of August. And then we have the uh, the eruption trip, which has the quad bikes. There got two guys coming along on that one. So we got at least one or two spots left there. Excuse me. And that's in June, middle of June. And that's going to be, it's always a remarkable trip. And, going on to the highlands on the quad bikes in Iceland, and then going to challenge yourself on these stones. And it's just, a different kind of experience. And it's a niche. I realize that. But, anybody can relate to strength anywhere. And you will also appreciate strength when you come on these trips and you realize, wow, these guys back in the day were no joke, right? And the priest's
Yeah.
daughter,
I know. I
yeah,
know. Like that is a phenomenal feat. And this is a nice segue into kind of the next section that I wanted to talk about was I you have been in the strength game for a very, very long time, and
yeah.
we are not young chickens anymore. How has that changed for you? Um,
Well, like I say, I mean, age is just a number, as we say. And I mean, of course, I think the biggest change for me in my strength is basically having that problem with my hip. And because that was when I did some of the first trips afterwards, and before I had my surgery, and I was nowhere near where I should be. I could hardly bend down and do my shoes when it was the worst before. And but that's the main thing. But now I'm just slowly building. I'm trying to stretch more, and you realize that you have to maintain yourself a lot better. You have to be sensible with your training. You can't push as hard, of course, but how do you say? old animals are hard to teach, something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Can't
Uh,
teach a old horse new tricks, I think.
yeah, yes, exactly. So my trick is worked very hard, and so probably one of the reasons, you know, I would say I would have gone further, in my opinion, if I would have rested more.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing to say, but I always believe that, don't be a wimp. You know, if it's going down, then I must train harder. So that was my sort of my logic back in the day, but that wasn't very logical back on it when I look back on it. But
Yeah.
nobody's perfect, I guess.
In my conversation with Steven, we talk about this too, is how, I mean, he's no young chicken either, but he's
No,
still doing amazing things. I mean, his biggest takeaway was just training a lot smarter. And, it's not doing a 5-day training per se.
yeah, yes,
And then working on like the mobility, keeping mobile. But again, he's just phenomenally strong.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. He's one of my inspirations, to keep going.
Yes.
So it just goes to show you can be tremendously strong no matter the age. I mean, when I think about that Ott Hogan, when I was competing as World Strongest Man, Ott Hogan was there and he was 52. He was my age, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Wow.
And he actually qualified. Yeah. Everything's in the head, you know. You got to just stay young in your head and keep going.
Yeah.
So that's for everything. But I would like to say, also mention that, like guys like Sean Orkel, these guys, stone lifters. Like Sean surprised me one time. He told me there's so many more stones in Iceland than you know about, and he was right.
Hmm.
And there are so many stones in Iceland that you need to, that we need to explore and see, and all became sort of revealed slowly. And then I got this, which is very exciting for me. Then I got this written document from a client of mine, and on the Westfjords there are two more fullsterkur. Now I haven't told anybody this, so you're the first one. So
Wow.
two more fullsterkur sets on the Westfjords, sort of no ish where it is, but I don't know if it's still there or whatever. But that's something I want to explore, and hopefully I will get to explore that this summer.
Wow. I'd
Yes.
love to see that. And I think this is kind of segueing into this last part of the episode, which is talking about legacy. And what do you hope to do through not only as the tours that you do, but as the steward? Like you are truly a steward of the story of these stones. What does that mean to you?
I mean, I don't really think of myself as any of that, but I just like to, appreciate that I am a part of it. And I'm not trying to put myself on any high horse or whatever, but I just really am proud that, and happy and just sort of thankful, most likely, just for being able to be a part of this and seeing all this stuff and seeing these stones be lifted in person. And I mean, I'm just thankful for all of that. And, I don't know if you know this, but my son actually comes with us every now and then on a trip. And I think my son is probably the youngest one to lift the Husafell stone. He was 18 when he did it. He got half strong when he was 15. He got Brynjolfstak last trip, first try. First try
Wow.
he lifted. Brynjolfstak is 281 kilos. And, he was only 18 doing that. And when he was with a cricket stone in Wales, which is 177 kilo of awkwardness, is molded like he got that off the floor. And he even got Alsterkur off the floor, which is 177 kilo. Funny weight, but there it is. In Iceland as well. And it's the Alsterkur stone. He got full strong of in the Lautrad as well. He has lifted full strong into his, well, almost into his lap, and then it slipped out, but that's full strong in Trittvik for you. But he's done, I mean, incredible stuff. And, that's just through, son and dad training, right? And, he's an inspiration in himself, that boy.
Yeah.
Very proud of him and proud to call him my son.
Yeah. And I think that has been one of the most rewarding parts of, I mean, predominantly I've the last 12, 15 years have devoted myself to like stone things or strongman, strong woman.
Amazing. Fair play
Yeah.
to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And my girls have grown up around it. And I'm sitting in my gym now and I can see my daughter's shoes. She's into powerlifting and she has a coach, she has her own program, she competes. And this isn't a life that I knew, right?
No.
And the girls saw all of this stuff, me lifting, me waking up in the morning, and it really my other daughter's in the military and
Oh,
has
wow.
done some amazing strength feats herself. And I
Yes.
think it's so incredible to be part of a legacy where you get to pass this strength on, not just as physical, but in the emotional and the believing in yourself. I mean,
Absolutely. 100%.
right?
Yeah.
What your son has accomplished is absolutely incredible, and you were a part of that formation. Now, obviously, he is strong, but you were part of him believing that
Yes.
all of these can be accomplished. And I think that that's just an amazing gift that we can give our kids.
I mean, how he got into it was amazing because back in the day, he would come with me to the gym, and me and the missus were training together, and we had him doing some jumping and, just some random fun stuff, create good connections with the gym, right?
Hmm.
For any parent to just go to the gym and is not taking their kids along every now and then, don't take them all the time, but every time you take them, make sure it's fun, make sure it's
Hmm.
entertaining, make sure you're succeeding, make sure you're a little bit sort of little improvements, throw further, jump higher, doesn't matter what it is. If you're creating good connections with your child and your gym, man, it's going to be rewarding beyond, right?
Yeah,
So that's everything. And that's when he was 14, he came to me and said, Dad, now I'm ready to lift. And I was like, we've
yeah.
been training together ever since. And now he wants to pursue Olympic lifting, which is right up his alley. He's big and heavy. He's explosive. He jumps incredible heights, and it's so much fun. I think Olympic lifting is going to be right up there for him, and he's got the strength and he's got the explosivity to do it. And he even sort of said to me, "Dad, when are the Olympics?" I'm like,
Wow.
"Yeah,"
Go for it.
which is very. I mean, hey, if you don't have a goal,
Yeah. No, and a piece of my connection to Iceland in my house is a few years back, I saw these Atlas stones, and they were part of the World Muscle Power series. And uh, they, John Paul had lifted them here. No tacky, did it in like the run in 35 seconds. And I expressed to this individual, like he knew that I love stones, that stones are kind of just the central of my being. And so he was looking for a home for them. So they are now in my garage. And
amazing.
yes, like so many world's strongest men have touched these stones that are just like incredible. And
Yes,
my girls get to see, hey, like my mom is guarding these or protecting these stones or watching over these stones.
yes,
And it's such an unnatural thing to walk out into the garage and say, "Hey, like these stones have been, touched by Jean Paul, Greg Ernst, Magnus, a whole bunch of
Greg
the
Ernst was a
strongest."
legend. The way
Right?
he did, yes, damn right. When he lifted that Husafell stone,
Yes.
yeah, that was the most exciting stuff I've ever seen. He was so happy. And, this is what I live for in my trips. If you succeed at something, yeah, it's so much fun. So much fun to watch and experience.
Oh,
Greg
that
Ernst was a legend.
I love that you know that because for those that don't know, Canadian strongman, phenomenal lifter, phenomenal stone lifter, and just absolutely incredible strength. And talk about grip strength. His
Ooh,
hands are like gigantic.
yes.
And I would love to have him on the show, but he's not very much of a social media guy,
Uh,
from what I understand. So, but speaking of that, then you've created as well as all these other strongmen, have created kind of a legacy in this area. But what do you see for stone culture in the next 50 years?
It's on the rise. It seems
Yeah.
to be the case.
Yeah.
Whether it's selfish to say you don't want it to go too high either. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want to see cues at the stone
Hmm.
or whatever. But I think, it is the etiquette which I've grown to know throughout my things, done some mistakes, but learned from it, done with that, just try to look forward. Jimmy has taught me a lot. And, the controversy of Jimmy bench pressing these immense stones. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
Okay, so Jimmy has his own thing of bench pressing stones. And I think he's the only one capable and the only one who sort of can do it. There are people who do it, but there's nobody like Jimmy. I mean, his immense pressing power is absolutely phenomenal. But it's, how do you say it? It pat the dog the wrong way. They was trying to tell him he was, some eco lifting or whatever. But
Hmm.
Jimmy doesn't eco lift. He does what his calling is, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It's it's a touch base. People dislike it. But then again, it became a hot topic. People talked about it. And Jim is incredibly respectful of the stones. And when he puts them down, there's no comparison. He just basically just puts them down, unless he's in a compromised position, of course. But, like anybody, but he's very respectful. He puts them down very safely. And yeah, it's just one of those things that, there's people going to agree, people are not going to agree. But it's it's a little bit about your calling and what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And he's known himself to be like a Christian strongman. He keeps him to himself, works at his own farm. He has a tremendous stone fence of stones that he has collected himself, and the stones always go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So they started where he started, and then he's got a testimony of stones. And Mike Christensen has actually seen them, and which is absolutely immense because I really want to go and visit Jimmy one day. That's going to be quite a quite a dream come true because he squats trees, he lifts all sorts of rocks. He has stones that are immensely big, and he said, "Stone a day keeps the doctor away."
That's perfect. I like
I
that.
mean, he's such an inspiration, and he's an incredible person. He's got this personality, but like I say, he's not very out there or outspoken, as with it, not social media and stuff. But he's a big believer, and it's just he's a very very interesting person to hang around with. And look at when he's lifting, it's just absolutely there's that 1,000% focus, and he never starts on the light stones to warm up. He does few leg swings and sort of side lunges and, you know, breathes. And then he's just straight to the biggest stone.
Yeah.
And he usually makes easy work of them. He's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and you've touched on something about the tradition and preserving tradition, and that there are some folks that believe that you should only lift the stone as they were meant to be lifted.
Yeah.
And I I myself, my stone journey, probably similar to Jimmy's, is very spiritual for
Yes.
me. And this past trip to Scotland, I went to the Bearven, and there is a folk tale, or maybe it's true, who knows,
Yeah.
but of a woman that lifted it with her apron.
Okay.
And so I took my apron. I
All
got
right.
a antique apron, and I brought it over, and I
Wow.
lifted it with my apron as a homage to her. And I think some people would say that that's not really, maybe that's not really a true lift. Maybe that's not respecting the history. But in my view, it is very much part of the history of that stone. I mean, there is
Yeah.
a whole folklore around it. Now, obviously, I want to lift it. I want to
Yeah.
lift it
Yeah.
from the ground without an apron for sure.
Of course.
I'm still working my grip strength there, but
Yeah.
I think I don't know who is going to win this argument. This debate is going to go on
Yes, of
forever.
course. And I respect everybody's opinion, right?
Yes, absolutely.
respecting everybody's opinion. But like I say, as long as they're respectful, that I think that's what I found. If they're respectful, they take care of the stone. You know, I would then generally believe that, bench pressing the stone is probably going to be a safer position than pressing it overhead,
Yes, or
in my
dropping it to the
opinion,
shoulder. Yeah.
because I think safer for the stone, safer for, like putting it back down again. I mean, you may be a good presser, but you didn't really practice putting the stone down after that, so maybe higher the fall. But of course, I realized that bench pressing could be a dangerous position if you lose grip on it as well. But that's one way of aspect. But that's Jimmy. He's studied that lift, and he actually bench pressed the 110 kilo Atlas stone in Torvis Garden.
Ugh.
So he took the thing and just put it on his chest, and he pressed it, and Torvi was like, "I've never seen that before," and I hadn't either. So it was an interesting thing. But like I say, not everybody's like Jimmy, and I appreciate that not everybody can control these lifts like Jimmy can. But I don't think there are many people who could press 110 kilo Atlas stone in an awkward position anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So because you have to do it on the ground.
Yes. And I think you've raised some important things. One is like respecting the stone regardless. I was so gentle with the stone when I was lifting it with the apron.
Yes.
And the other part is that knowing my own limitations. I will not go to a stone that is not within my realm of, okay, no, because that almost sounds limiting. But if it's a big stretch for me, I'm not going to be lifting it. Like the Wallace putting stone that has just recently been reintroduced to lifting, that is not a stone that I will be attempting to put wind beneath until I feel comfortable that
Yeah.
I can lift in excess of that by quite a significant amount.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
That's very, I mean, we have to recognize where we're at in our training.
Yes.
And that's one thing that, if you're going to come and, solely focus on the stones, you better know what you can achieve. And because when you arrive at the stone, there is you can get humbled pretty quick. And that's what Jimmy says. No stone is going to be, how do you say, disrespected by me.
Yes.
And he is a very good sort of representative of how to lift stones, because he does it very, very safely. He does it very, very well. And he's not excessively. If it's a stone that he can really control, he will press it overhead.
Yeah.
So, but there we go. And he thinks that shouldering. He thinks that shouldering is because you can't press it. So, but in my opinion, I think shouldering is a very, very great feat of strength. Jimmy is Jimmy. He has his own opinions.
But,
I
yeah.
have my opinions, and everybody has different opinions, and we got to respect them all.
Absolutely. So we're just winding down here. A few quick last questions. Favorite historic stone?
It has to be the Husabel stone.
Of course. Yeah. No doubt about that.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, no, you can't really get anywhere closer to that. I really think it's a challenge for anyone. It's also doable. You can flip the stone and you can do all sorts of, good positions. My son, for example, he flipped it when he got it, and he managed to lift it up. But when you're like holding that slim side upside down and you don't roll it around to get a better grip, it's very hard to control.
And what would you say the hardest lift has been?
Sorry?
The hardest lift.
I mean, Trétvíkurstone, footsterkur, is definitely, it has no grip. You have to squeeze the life out of it, and you have to be immensely strong to get that thing off the floor. And I think that's probably one of the most amazing. If you can lift it off flat, the biggest Hun, I saw him. He lifted it flat off the ground. Absolutely phenomenal. Great lift. The cradle lift, like I say, my son has lifted it almost to his lap with the cradle. So Mikey, he got it nice upright position. Jimmy, same cradle, stand up with it. It was absolutely unbelievable. Such an amazing feat of squeezing power and just control. And yeah, there are so many fantastic lifts out there, but I'd say Trittvik full strong is very much
The hardest.
challenging lift.
Yeah.
It's but anybody will tell you that who goes there. You can get humbled pretty damn quick of that stone.
And then what would you say best describes Icelandic strength? What word?
Viking power. That's basically what comes to my mind. But of course, the Viking Sven Carlsen used to say that. But well, it's I think that comes a lot from John Paul Sigmarsson.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's an amazing feat of well, it's just an amazing thing in Iceland, and to have been grown up with John Paul and Magnus, winning all these titles,
Mm-hmm.
it's truly a privilege.
And what would you say then is a definition of then the true power, like beyond just strength?
Your mindset, I would say.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I mean, if your mindset isn't there, you can be as strong as an ox. I remember one time I was in a strongman competition. I always enjoy telling this story. Is that there was 180 something stone, and this German guy comes to the stone and says very loud and abruptly, he goes like, "Oh, this is going to be very hard," he said. And I'm looking at him. He goes to that stone, and his mindset is still it's going to be hard. But he grabs the stone and he lifts it off the floor, like looked easy. I swear to God. And then he walked away and said, "Yes, that was hard." I was thinking to myself, wait, what? You just lifted a stone. You made it look quite easy. And just I didn't say that to him, but it struck me as odd. But it is his mindset, right?
Yeah.
If he would have gone to that's going to be easy, he would have probably flipped it onto his lap and lifted it up. So mindset is key.
And that's a great thing. I'm going to start drinking my Alani now because I'm about to go do some Hatfield squats, and I'm going in with that attitude, and I'm going to try to add another 5 or 10 pounds on my Hatfield today. Well, this has been amazing, John. This has been absolutely amazing. And I always end off the episode with 3 pieces of advice. And I think I know generally where you're going to go with some of this stuff or some of your recommendations, but 3 pieces of advice for the folks listening today.
I mean, the work that goes behind the scenes before Instagram and all that stuff is what counts.
Mhm.
It's not about the PBs, it's about the work you're willing to do without the PBs. I mean, if you're going to lift stones, practice all sorts of carries and make sure that you're just really good at, how do you say it, squeezing. And it's one of the hardest part about the Trittvik stone is that having that crushing power to get the thing off the floor is probably what people lack the most. And it goes with any stone. You have to be able to squeeze it to lift it. The Husabel stone is the same, but it's a little bit more grippy. But you have to really squeeze it on one side if it's in an upright position. But there's a way that Mikey does it. It's lower lift, but it has more grip. Of course, the flipping position is quite impressive if you can do it. So yeah, practice and find out what suits you, but just try to perfect you. You can't compare to yourself to any other lifter because anyone is going to be sort of have a different technique to you. I mean, I found out that I had to roll around when I lifted the what's it called? Oh, now stolen from me, Scottish stone. But I had to flip it around many times before I found the right position.
Oh,
So
Fiona, maybe?
yeah, Fiona,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow, salute you, man. So Fiona, I had to flip quite a lot around to try to find the right position, and then when I finally got it, it was a really, really joyful moment. And but it was one of those things. But this is like all after my hip surgery and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't in my prime at all. But now I'm slowly getting better and better and better. So hopefully I will have a good summer running, but I might be doing a lot of Olympic lifting with my son though. But we'll see. We've got 2 competitions coming out for my son. And always don't be afraid of the boring work. You know, make sure you're doing the stretches. If there's one thing that you need to be doing is, making sure that you're mobile enough to get into those positions, because you never know what position will get you to lift the stone. And one of the about sort of flexibility and that kind of stuff, the cradle position requires you to be extremely flexible.
Yes. And sadly, I tried it the other day to lift one of the Husafels and like my sandbags. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I have to work on that. I have
yeah,
to work on that.
yeah. But like I say, just work behind the scenes, find your
Mhm.
position, find your calling on these stones. And it's almost essential to go and try them so you know what you're up against.
Yes.
However, you can't go with that attitude. I'm
Yes.
just going to
Yes.
try. You have to come in there wanting it. Yeah, that's where you need to up your game if you're trying to make the best out of your trip. But like I say, fair play to anyone. Fair play to you, miss, that you went alone and just got it done. Amazing.
Jòn, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for this conversation. I wish it could go on much longer. I want to talk about that crushing strength, but we'll have to talk about that at another time. But it's so, so critical because it isn't just about gripping with the hands. It's that your whole chest has to come
Yes.
and be involved with that. And that is something I'm working on with my coach now, is to get better at that crushing piece. But again, like we talked about preserving the culture, and you reminded us so frequently through this episode that strength is so much more than the muscle part of it. And the stone lifting journey can be very much that strength piece, but also that strength mentally.
Yep.
And so for people that want to go on your trips and to experience all that you have to offer, I encourage you all to follow Jòn on Valgeirs Strengthtrips on
Yes.
Instagram. I will have a link on the post to Jon's Instagram and website so that you can reach out. But again,
you.
Jòn, thank you so much for everything today. And it has been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. And I admire that you said 1.5 hours. It is almost on the dot.
I try to make the trains run on time there, Jòn.
Amazing. Now, have a fantastic session. Stay strong and all the best.
Take care. Have a great afternoon.